Okay everybody, how you doing? Welcome back. I have got a new video for you here. I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I set up my drift setup from the beginning of the rod all the way down to the reel to the tip of my hook. So I want you guys to know exactly how I'm doing all this and how I'm gonna be adjusting these cheaters and these leaders and the floats and the beads and the stuff that I use and why I change from barometric pressures to water flow, water clarity, water temperature, type of fish. There's lots of different factors that make you want to know how to change these things so you can get into more fish. So let's go ahead and get started with the rod. I found this rod a couple years ago. It's the one I have a video of, my rod that I picked for last year that I thought was one of the best, lightest rods that I'm still using today. And I've also let all my clients use this rod and this reel combo. I've got two of them and they are still holding up strong. So here you go. This is the Okuma Classic Select Pro, and this is a great drift rod. So if you're going to go drifting in areas that you're going to use less than 1 ounce of weight. This is rated for, the model number is GSP-S-902M. It's a 9-foot, and the line capacity or rating for the tension is 8 to 17 pounds, lure size or weight being 3/8 to 1 ounce. So that's what I like this rod for. It's really universal. It's got a really good sensitive tip, but a really strong backbone to play good steelhead, salmon, whatever you need to. You could even drop a sturgeon off onto the shore with this thing. So what I'm going to also show you is this reel that I got, which is an Abu Garcia Revo. And this model number is, let's see here, I'll show it to you right there. It is the Revo 3X40, and it is a 7 bearing. It's a 6-to-1 ratio, which is really cool. You turn this reel one time and you're bringing in, I think this thing was like 4 or 5 feet or something crazy on there. I forgot it's actually in there, but retrieve, there it is, return rate 39 inches per turn. So I mean, that is just, it's unbelievable. So, and you got a great drag. It goes all the way up to 11 pounds, which you never need that much. You set your drag to about 8 pounds to 10 pounds is plenty for steelhead and salmon. And it's super light, 230 grams, 8.1 ounces. What that allows me to do, you guys, is fish for long periods of time with this reel. Let's go ahead and turn this other camera on. And we're going to start getting some lower views here. So this reel is so light because it does not have a big housing right here. You see how it's tapered off, and it's made with titanium, I believe. And so it's super light in this entire bell area. It does not have reverse gears. That's it, no reverse gears, and that takes some weight out of it too. So the balance of this rod and the weight of this rod is just absolutely amazing. You can see the balance on here, how well it's balanced, which is really important to have that balance so that your arms don't get tired throughout the day. And when you go to lift to set the hook, you do not slack or stall, not even for a split second, because those fish can spit a hook out fast, especially if you let your hooks get dull. So this is the combo of the year last year, and it is climbing up for this year. This combo, I think, is down to like $250. Don't quote me on that and go look. It's actually maybe even cheaper now. These things went on sale at the end of last year. When I had got it, it was new the year before. So I'm sure you're going to get a really great deal on it, as well as the rod. It's been out for a couple of years now, and so you're going to be able to find these for really good prices, maybe even $100 on both of them, and you're going to have a really good professional, long time casting without your arm getting tired rod, if I could say that any longer. So I am just taking my braid. I'm going to go through that next, what I put on my braid and how I put it on my reel real quick. I'm just going through these eyes right here, and I'm going to pull some more slack out. There's no reverse gear, so that is the drawback to this, is I wound it up around the bottom, and you can't just put it in reverse to get that back out. So that is one hassle, but the amount of time you get to still fish versus that, it's totally worth it, because you just flip the bail on it. It's not like it's a bait caster. You have to tear the whole thing apart. You flip the bail over, and you're done. It's right back to work again. So like I said, it's a super good combo. Incidentally, I used that reel and this rod combo last year in an international fishing derby in Costa Rica, in the saltwater wave coast derby. It was a river or in the waves from the beach, and I got on the board but didn't place very high. It was a nice fish I got to eat, but nevertheless I brought this reel home, tore it apart, got all of the sand out of it. When I got home from the derby, I tore these reels apart, I cleaned them up, and I've caught a bunch of fish on them ever since. The drag still works, everything still works on it, and they were pretty grindy with all the sand that was getting shoved in there from the waves were hitting me, knocked me back 2 or 3 feet. Then I would cast and they'd knock me back. So this is how good of a rod combo this is my point, not to show you this video behind me from Costa Rica. So here we're going to move on real quick. Here your main line. And let me show you how that works for your rod. Let's go ahead and look at the braid that I'm using on this reel and on this rod setup. Right now I'm testing a new braid that I got. It's a 25-pound braid. You can get other braids. There's lots of them on the market. This is a more cost-effective braid that I'm testing. I landed a few kings on it so far, and I pulled off some pretty gnarly snags that broke off my leader and opened up my swivel with my weight on it. I got everything back, and that's how strong this stuff is. So I'm pretty impressed with it. This is something that I can let you know how to buy it, where it's at, but it's not in our area. It is overseas. So you can find any 25 to 30 pound braid. I suggest using that size braid for one reason and one reason only. If you're using, when you then go to use your leaders that are 8, 10, 12 pounds, you are going to be sure not to break the braid off in the river if you do the weight setup the way I'm going to show you. I have very, very low breakage of my main line in the water because the way we do our slider weights, this includes our bobber setups. We'll get back 2 naked swivels and everything else is gone because the way we tie these up. It's very important to keep the braid out of the water and tie your setups like this, besides the fish being able to not detect your weight in their mouth, and you have a better feel for that mouthing so you can set the hook. So let's go ahead and show you one of the most important things that you do when you do grab this line. And first put it onto your reel. I use a knot that is just called a blood knot, I guess is what I've always called it. You're just going to wrap it around and you pull it down and it pulls tight, and then you just clip it off. But the key is, so that it doesn't slide on that spool, take a small piece of duct tape or even packing tape and run it across that a small section, about a 1/2 inch section of that line to your spool so it never spins on there. Braid is really slick, and if it's not wound really tight, and if you don't do that, it can completely spin on there and you'll think your drag is broken. So that's very important when you add braid to your line. Then you're just going to run it through your eyelets to the end of your rod. And this part's important because this is why I broke the tip of this rod in the first place. If you can see that tip, the plastic part popped out because I didn't run a bead on the top of my line to keep my gear from going in there. And what happened is my swivel got caught inside of there, and when I went to cast, it popped that tip right out of there. So make sure you go ahead and put that bead on first. What we're going to do is take this bead here. These are 5mm beads. Let's go back to that bead real quick. It's just a 5mm bead, and I like to choose a neutral color. These are little white beads. It's kind of neutral when it's floating through the water. You have other color beads. I also will use these darker beads as well. So the bead preference really isn't going to hurt much as long as it's about a 5mm bead, and I'll show you why in a minute. I like to keep everything small and about the same size. It's very important. So we're going to go with that first 5mm bead. Then we're going to use a 5mm snap swivel. That's why I was saying we're going to stick to that 5mm, okay? So this 5mm snap swivel you're going to use is very important to get the kind that are not locking on the end. You do not want that end piece where it comes around. You don't want the end piece where it comes around and latches. If you get that, it doesn't break open. We want this flat style, so this will literally bend and pop open when it gets snagged on the bottom, and you get your main line back in that braid. And what will happen, the weight will pop off, and you just pop another weight on, just like the one I dropped. I just grab another weight, I bend this back, I tie another leader onto my swivel, and I'm back in the game. You're not having to retie your whole main line. This 5mm swivel, and I buy these in bulk, and make sure you match your swivel size, 5mm to 5mm. These are the swivels that I have here right now, and as you can see, these swivels match each other per size, so they don't slide through each other, okay? And they're fairly minuscule. They're not too big. They're not adding a lot of weight to this right here. I want to control how much weight I have down there for bouncing the bottom, and I don't want this to add to that and change these amounts that I have in the weight, and I'll show you what I'm talking about that soon as well. Watch out on the market when you order 5mm. Make sure that it's not like this situation here. These are 5mm Bomac right here. This kind, you see here. But when I got them, they are quite a bit bigger than the 5mm here, as you can see. I'm not quite sure why they're both labeled 5mm. When you go to Sportco and look at 5mm, it's also like this on most of them. So I'm not sure if what part they're measuring from, but this is the 5mm I like. This works no problem, but again, if you're trying to pick a 0.3 weight and you add this extra an extra 0.2, now you've got a 0.4 or 5. And I like to keep them small and minuscule so they don't see this coming at them and tend to want to move their head out of the way. So I try and go with the smaller stuff. These are plenty strong enough. These are like 35, 40 pound swivels. You're not going to have a problem with it at all. So back to the swivel and why we use that snap swivel without the locking mechanism on the end. It's a locking bend where it just comes around and it locks. We're going to take this weight and slide this on here, and it's very important to use a slider weight. And the reason is when those fish mouth your gear, this slider weight just goes back and forth and it goes directly to the tip of your rod. So when the fish hits, it bounces the tip of your rod. If you look at the tip of my rod, it's going crazy where that weight's barely moving comparatively to the tip of this rod. And that's what's going to happen when the fish mouths this. You're going to feel it better on the tip of your rod because he's not going to be picking this thing up and then moving the tip of your rod. If this is fixed and tied to this, the fish has to pick up your weight, pick it up, and then bounce your rod while bouncing the weight. They don't want to do that. It doesn't last long, and this is part of why I get so many more hookups on my drift setup. Now let's add to that why we use this weight. This or a slinky is the best you're going to get. This is cheaper than slinkies. That's why I use this. But again, what happens with this swivel, if this gets stuck in the rocks, this swivel will break open and it will let this go free. I have a video showing you how to make these with measurements. I'll show you right here. I carry this bin around when I take my clients out, and these are all marked with different sizes. Here's a 0.5. These are all different sizes. Here's a 0.3. And if I run out and want to cut more, I don't have to sit out there guessing or measuring. I have a measuring chart right here on my box. So if I put this down here, I can see that this is a 0.3 right here because I have it marked out and measured. You just get a pair of pliers. Not any old pliers though, guys. You got to have these specialty pliers. And what these do is after you get a good pinch down on here, you pinch this down really good like that. And then you just take this hole punch right here. You can see that. Punch it through. Voila. You've got a new weight. Okay, and this stuff's a lot cheaper. I get it in 5-pound rolls for I believe $23 on Amazon. If you find it somewhere else, it might be a little bit more, but again, it's cheaper than the little round slinky balls that you have to get to put into a slinky setup. which is a very good setup. If you don't know what a slinky is, I should show you that. It's this material here. It's a lot more slinkyable, so it will slide out of the rocks even better than the solid core. This solid core will come back, it will bend and twist and scrape off and pull right out of the rocks, compared to those cannonballs are 20 times more snaggy than these are. And these are a little less snaggy than these. Again, they just cost a little more. They're full of balls. If you look inside there, there's balls in there. And the little balls come in a pack in a tube, and you just push them down in here, and then you melt this closed, and you put your hole right through there, and you're fishing away. So I have only chosen this to be the winner of this type of drift setup. I also use this on my bobber setup, guys. I'm telling you, you don't lose your bobbers. They don't break away because that swivel opens up and it gives you everything back. Not to mention, on your bobber setup, you still want that same effect. That fish feels that weight, he spits it out faster. If he doesn't, your bobber moves more and you get that hook set. Just watch these videos and you'll see what I'm talking about. We're pretty much pulling as that fish pulls it down. We're getting it timed in there to where we're pulling back when it's in their mouth. So we're going to go back to this swivel here. We're going to have this sliding up and down to the bead that goes to the top up there. And then we're going to go with one more bead. That other bead is probably down on the floor somewhere, as those are. We'll pick those up later. So we're just going to take this. You guys can see that. There's a hole in the bead, of course. We're going to go right through there and slide that bead on. So now we've got a mess. Okay, so now we've got our slider weight on our 25-pound braid, okay, with our 2 beads. Now we're going to go ahead and attach this barrel swivel, this 5mm, and you're going to hold the main line, which is here, and this tag end that went through the hole together, and keep them together. And you're just going to make a loop with this tag end. Move that over there. Make a loop around it just like that. Okay, so I'm just going to loop it down around and come back across the top of it and hold those together and come back through this hole 3 to 5 times. I like to do it 5 times just to be sure. I'm going to go 1 like that, and I kind of pull it up and hold it with my fingers so it doesn't get any slack in it. Mend your line. We're going to go 2 and kind of pull that out of that slack out of there. We'll go 3, pull that slack out of there. I'm going to go ahead and go with 4 because with braid, this knot will really tighten down really good. So there's 4 right there. And you see how that is all wrapped around that main line? Just go ahead and slowly pull it back like this and see how it made a perfect knot. Now, you just pull the main line and hold your swivel and watch that knot as it closes up. Okay, now to double check the knot and pull it really tight and see it really cinch up there, okay? That's nice and cinched up. Of course, the GoPro batteries, I still have to deal with GoPro in court. They are just horrible, horrible products. Okay guys, we got the barrel swivel tied on with that knot that I showed you. That swivel slides back and forth and you're all set. Now we're ready to put on a leader. Now I have one that's already pre-tied here for you. I'll have a different video showing you how to tie these leaders. But real quick, I'm going to show you that this is going to be anywhere from 8 to 12 pound test, depending on where you're fishing and how new you are. If you're extremely new, do not use 8 pound. You want to use 12 pound test or even 10 pound. You get excited and you're going to break off the first couple of fish you catch. You got to really finesse with the 8 pound test a little bit more than the 10. So I'm going to suggest you go ahead and get 10 to 12 pound mono or fluorocarbon. Depending on how clear and low the water is will depend on which one I'm going to use. I'll use the fluorocarbon on really clear rivers. On the Green River and on the Puyallup River, I just use the Iser line What's that color called? I think it's called natural green. Actually, it doesn't even have a color on it. I thought there was an actual color green that they had called this. Maybe it was on the box, but if you look close, it is more of a greenish color, where this is more of a clear. Okay, and that's where I'll switch to the fluorocarbon. This is a little bit stiffer, and this is a little bit more soft. So this will flex a little more than this as well. So there's no problem using this Izorline. It's a lot cheaper. You can get a lot more liters out of it. I do about 7-foot leader. So we're going to take a 7-foot leader off of there to start with for drift fishing. For eggs, for drift fishing eggs, I usually go with just about a 4-foot leader to 3-foot leader. And I tie this to the back of the hook, and then I run my cheater through the back, or a bead through the back of the shank, just like this, and then run it back through the eye. Run your main line back through the eye. So that gives you your egg loop to put your eggs on. Okay? So then you can pull this down. So if this was going to be a drift egg, an egg drifting, so if this was going to be an egg drifting setup, this is what I'm going to do with my shorter leader egg drifting setup. And then I'm just going to tie it on here. The same knot that I tied to the back of this shank, I'm going to show you now. You're going to go through the eye of that barrel swivel. Okay? And what I do is I hold it with this hand, because that spins. Some people have a hard time doing it the way I'm about to do it. But I hold it in my fingers down here tight with my left pinky and my other finger. You have to hold it tight so it doesn't spin. And then you're going to take this one and you have to turn it, and then I hold it with these fingers. Turn it and hold it, turn it and hold it, turn it and hold it. If you try and hold it here, it just spins. So you actually have to hold that end piece and keep it from spinning, so that you're twisting this line. And I'm going to twist that line 7 times. So I'm twisting the end of the barrel swivel, but not grabbing the barrel, or it will just spin. Now you see how it's twisted 7 times? Can you see that? Get it wet, dip it in the water, or just go through your mouth with it. And you're going to go back through that hole. You see the hole that's right here? You're just going to go right back through this hole. And if it's almost dark and you can't see, what you do once you get it through the hole is wiggle it back and forth, because if it's not in the hole, that's not going to wiggle back and forth like that for you. Okay? Now what you're going to do, I usually grab my teeth and pull it, but so you can see what's happening, I'm going to use my fingers and pull this line down, and see how it's tightening up here? What I do, so it doesn't burn that line, even though I've wet it, I help it with my finger a little bit as it comes down. And that knot should cinch up nice and tight. And I kind of help it. Like I say, I'll give it a little bit of help. If it looks like it's not sliding, don't force it, or you'll put a burn in the line right here. So start pulling on it, and when it slides and stops, give it a little help. Do it again, and do it again until it really cinches down. And give it that really good hard test, you guys. And I'll tell you why. Because if you don't do it there, it's going to be tested on a fish. And when it breaks, you're going to be unhappy you lost your first fish because of bad knot. So there you have it. You've got your slider weight on your 25 to 30 pound braid. You got your barrel swivels, number 5, your number 5 beads, your break open swivel, barrel swivel that it opens, okay, to your leader, either my cheater setup leader with some scent on it, which is drift fishing anywhere from 5 feet, 3 feet to 7 feet, or the egg setup. And what you're going to do on the drift setup, if you're just using the cheater and some smell, like smelly jelly, like this smelly jelly here, if you're going to use that, or some sand shrimp because you don't have eggs, you just add that to this yarn on these cheaters. You go from 7.5 feet. You can watch my channel and it'll show you how to tie these. You tie these with a small piece of yarn on there. You've got this type of yarn. You've also got the black yarn. So if I've got a black bead or float on there, I'm going to go with the red yarn. If I've got a colored red or reddish color on there or green, I'm going to go with the black yarn. So I'm going to offset that and make these look like small minuscule flies so the fish easily pick them up, suck them, and spit them out. They don't hesitate and move, and that's why we use a small number 4 for our drift setups. When we switch over to doing egg fishing, what we're going to do is we're going to run a number 1 hook for small hard clumps of eggs, and then we're going to run a number 1/0 hook for the bigger clumps of fresh eggs. And these 2 different size hooks are going to get you into a lot of fish. If you go much bigger than these, those hooks are not as sharp, and you'll miss more fish because they can feel it and spit it out, and it doesn't stick to their tongue. So it's very important to know that. On my next drift fishing video, leader tying setup for these, it's going to be another video. It'll be too long to add it into this one because I'm going to explain to you when and why we change over and use beads versus these floating cheaters. It's very important to know when to change based on barometric pressures and stuff like that. Water flow, water temperature, water clarity. There's a lot of things that's going to change why we would set up these different setups and how to tune them more properly to get you into more fish. Although this one right here is a winner. A lot of people have been sending me pictures this year left and right of catching fish, steelhead, salmon on all the different tributaries from here to Oregon with this setup right here. So I hope this helps everybody. I showed you how to go over the weights, how to snap them, how to measure them, the different size swivels, number 5s, the 1/4 inch solid core lead. This is in my Jello cure video for my eggs. Don't miss that out. The link is going to be in my video here. We use Jello sugar cure. It's a sugary cure. We went over our rod selection and the best reel combo because it's super light and it's not going to let your arms get tired. We went over our different hooks, and here's again a different variety of different types of floats that I use. They're called cheaters and corkies, and in the next video I'll show you the difference between using those cheaters and corkies and or using something like these beads here. Nice translucent clear see-through beads or the dark beads. Okay, so I'm going to go over that in a separate video. I hope this helps you guys out to catch more fish. Be sure to like, follow, and share. Don't forget to hit the notifications on your YouTube channel and on your device so that you get notified of the next video coming out, and there will be one coming out. I guarantee that. We have a lot of great videos already from 2024 that we've been recording, and we're going to share them with you guys so you can see what happens, whether it's bloopers, catching fish, or how to. See you guys on the next one.